Again, we're going to be talking all about 10.4 today and the really exciting new features that are going to be coming out with version 10.4. So, some of you may be curious, what is coming out with version 10.4? Just like I said, as before, OU Campus version 10.4 will be coming out in early February, so keep your eyes peeled. We've got this as a teaser Tuesday for the new features that are coming with it. Our agenda today, we're going to cover at least 3 of the 4 main big enhancements coming to the product with the release of version 10.4. We have 2 new gadgets coming out of 10.4, the Notes Gadget and Bookmarks Gadget, which will be pretty self-explanatory, but we will be discussing them in detail today. And we're also going to be talking about Tag Manager, which is probably the biggest of the changes that are coming out with 10.4. Tag Manager is going to represent a real big shift in how you can search for and categorize files inside of OU Campus. So we'll be covering that in great detail. And then if we have a little bit of time, I'll be talking a little bit about some of the changes that are coming to LDP Forms. We are introducing a couple new form elements to LDP Forms, as well as kind of bringing some enhancements to the way that you build your form and customize some of its functionality. So I'll be kind of just showing you a preview of those features, at least in the PowerPoint, and if we do have some extra time right at the end, I might be able to kind of show you in the product. But at the very least, you'll at least kind of get an overview of what is to come there. Okay, and then of course, at the end of everything, we're going to have Q&A. So, first of all, the Notes Gadget. As the name probably implies, the Notes Gadget is going to be a gadget that allows you to add private or public notes to a page. So, say for example, you want to make sure that anyone editing a particular page in OU Campus knows a couple key pieces of information, such as maybe there's an event that's mentioned in the page and you want to just make sure that everyone knows when that event ends or any other details about that event. Or you could potentially create a private note just to yourself. So you're working on a page, you're not able to finish it by the end of your workday, but you want to leave yourself a reminder note to, what actually still needs to change. So you could leave yourself a private note through this gadget as well. The next option we have is the Bookmarks Gadget, and the Bookmarks Gadget is going to allow you to easily bookmark any URL in OU Campus for easy access. So say, for example, you have a couple files that you are working on consistently and always need to be updated. Maybe you bookmark them in the gadget for easy access. Additionally, maybe there's a particular report that you as an administrator are going to be running consistently, maybe some sort of custom report that gives you details about all of the page products, or maybe the template groups or something like that applied to all of the directories in your site. Instead of having to navigate to the custom report and checking all of the boxes in the same order that you always do, you could just run a custom report with those options and then bookmark it, and that way you don't need to click all those checkboxes every time. And then next of all, we have Tag Manager. Like I said, tags can now be added to pretty much all content inside of OU Campus. If you've been in OU Campus for a while, you've known that we've given the ability to tag assets for quite a while now. So if you're wondering about those tags, they don't go away. They will stay just as you would expect them to, but now those tags will be able to be applied to things like pages and binary files, as well as the assets that you're used to already. You can then use those tags to easily find content that you need. So the pages list view, the asset manager screen, even file choosers when you're adding an image to a page through a WYSIWYG editor, for example. All of those now have fields where you can search for tags to find content that is tagged with that sort of content. And then, the part that a lot of people are looking forward to is once 10.4 is released, you will be able to modify your XSL files in order to harness these tags and use them to display dynamic content on your pages. So say, for example, you want to display a list of all of the tags that are associated with a given page. You can edit your XSL to show that. And you can also edit your XSL to maybe perhaps show a section on your page that is related content, or show a set of links to pages that are also tagged with the same tags that this page is linked to. So these sort of options are all going to be available with the introduction of Tag Manager and the requisite XSL to make it happen. So very exciting stuff. And then finally, we've got some updates to LDP. I'll be just kind of hitting on the main points right now during the PowerPoint, just so we're all kind of on the same point. And if I don't have enough time to really talk about it in the product, I want to make sure that everyone knows what they can look forward to. So we have a couple new elements in addition to kind of the single line text fields, checkboxes, multi-line text fields, all that sort of stuff that you're used to when building forms in LDP. Now we also have a date time picker, which allows the user to choose a date and or time. So you could do a specific only date, you could do specifically only time, or you could do both. So it's useful for kind of choosing appointments or sign-in times for your forms. And we also have an instructional text field, which will just essentially show instructional text about the form without requiring the user to put any sort of input into that form element. So you have a mini WYSIWYG editor, so you can format your text in the way that you need it to, and then that's just going to pretty much sit in that portion of the form without requiring user input of any sort like there. So very exciting. Just one thing to note, I do have this written here to make sure it's pretty obvious, but in order to take advantage of the new features that are coming out with the updates coming to LDP Forms of 10.4, it will require your XSL files in OU Campus that are used to render the form appropriately and make it look the same as the rest of your template and your site design. Those XSL files will need to be updated in order for you to take advantage of these new features, such as instructional text, the date time picker. All of those things won't work unless you actually update the XSL files. So when 10.4 does get released, there's going to be a lot of working back and forth in order to kind of coordinate that between the team that implemented your site in OU Campus and your web team as well. So of course it will be a process, but just one thing to make sure there. Anyways, moving on to some other form elements changes. We also now have the capability to configure helper text for all form elements. So for every form element that you add, you can add an optional field there for help text where you can just add some additional alt text to give users more instructions about what to do with that particular form element. And we also have the enhancement to add the required checkbox for all form elements. In the past, we had the ability to mark single-line text fields and a couple other options as being required, but things like checkboxes weren't able to be required natively in the product. You'd have to inject some additional XML code for that to work. But now we have that option built in for all of our form elements. Actually, we're already getting questions. This is great. So we have one question that asks, why would I need to use the instructional text area? The instructional text area is useful, say for example, if you do have a form that has perhaps multiple sections to it. So you have a single form that's talking about demographic information. Maybe you have some brief instructional text to just describe what you want your users to fill in for that part of the form. But maybe you also want to break up the second part of the form that asks different kinds of questions. You want to just put in another instructional text element to just describe, okay, this is the second section, this is the kind of responses that we're expecting for the second section of the form, just as one example. So the second thing, we also have some enhancements coming to the form settings panel. So if you all remember, the success message and failure messages used to simply just be a standard text field where you would just end up adding some text here and there without the ability to really format that text or do much special with it. Now we have some enhancements coming to it. Success message and the failure message have mini WYSIWYG editors added to them now, so you can format your text a little bit more fancily this way. And we also have the ability to perform a URL redirect on form submission now. Instead of just having the form disappear and the success message appear, you can have your users be redirected to a specific URL upon successful completion of the form. So I know that that's going to be something that some of our users who are interested in kind of tracking form submissions using Google Analytics and things like that a little more closely, that's going to allow for that to happen a little bit better. And also, you see that we have the option to include a Captcha as well. So this is also another thing that needs to be added in the XSL, but now we can natively include Captcha upon form submission instead of having to do a lot of work on the back end. So it's a little bit more user-friendly for everyone who does want to use Captcha as a security and anti-spam method for your forms. So there we go. You can add your success message URL redirect as well as mini WYSIWYGs for the failure message. And if I change the success message option to something other than URL redirect, I'd also have a mini WYSIWYG appear for that field as well. And then finally, Captcha. We can also change the submission button text. So normally the button will simply just say submit when you click it, but now you can change that. You can change that text to say something other than submit. We have a couple more questions regarding Captcha. So Carlene is asking, does it use reCAPTCHA or a homegrown solution? Carlene, I'm not actually sure off the top of my head right now, but I will make sure to follow up with our development team to check on that, and I'll email you with the response once this webinar is done. And then we also have another question just reminding someone what Captcha is. Captcha is a security measure that requires users to submit a randomly generated selection of numbers and letters, capitalizations and all that sort of thing, in order for them to successfully submit the form. And that is mostly due to preventing robots from just kind of spamming forms, filling them out and submitting them hundreds of times and cluttering up your form results. So this just kind of proves that you have to be human in order to read the text and then submit the form successfully. We also have some more questions about the submit button text in terms of a character limit, and that's another thing that I'm not sure off the top of my head with, but I will make sure to follow up with our development team, and if there is any sort of character limitation, I will make sure to email you with the results there. So yeah, once again, lots of questions about what kind of Captcha we're using. I wish I knew off the top of my head, but I will make sure to email everyone who does want to know with the answer as soon as I get that from our development team. And the final enhancement that's coming to LDP Forms is with the email messages. In the past we've had the ability to include submitted values into the email messages from the to field, the from field, the subject field, the body field, just to kind of make those email responses more dynamic. We've included a small addition to this, a small enhancement to this feature to include all submitted values into the body text. So this is something that's really useful. I know a lot of customers like to get an email sent to themselves whenever someone fills out their form. And in those situations, maybe in that email, not only do they want to be notified if there is a form submission, they want to be able to, at a glance, quickly see the data that was submitted for that particular submission. And so in that case, they would normally have to manually add all of those variables into the body text. Well, now with this checkbox, we're going to be able to include those submitted values with just a simple click of the checkbox, and it's going to fill in all of the user submitted data in your email, so you will be able to So you'll be able to get that done a little bit more quickly, especially for the really long forms that have, 5, 10, 15, even 20 form elements that you want to collect the data for. So just another time saver that we've done to make things a little bit easier on your end. So I know that there's been quite a few questions that have come in with regards to LDP forms and even some other things. I know that Melanie has asked a question about Tag Manager. I will get to that as soon as we get a little bit farther into our demonstration of Tag Manager, and then I'll loop back in and answer that as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the product so we can kind of get a preview of all of the things that I've just talked about here. So I'm just over here into one of my numerous demo sites. Let me just log into my site here. And the first thing, oh, sorry, we had someone playing around in this demo sandbox on the index page. I apologize for that error there. But one thing I was going to mention is with the advent of the new year, I'm also trying out a new audio solution for these webinars. So I'm hoping that the audio quality has improved over last year's Training Tuesdays. But that's a quick aside. Let's go ahead and start looking at the 2 new gadgets that are available to use first. So I'm just going to go into Setup Gadgets here to just make sure that I have my Bookmarks Gadget added into the system, and it looks like it has been. And I'm just going to go ahead and pop into my sidebar here and turn it on, first of all. Thank you, John. I'm glad that the audio sounds good, and also Idalia. I'm glad that the audio is working as well as I hoped it would. So I've just gone and activated my Bookmarks Gadget. And as you can see, it's showing up here on my sidebar, so I can now start going ahead and adding some bookmarks. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to a few pages in OU Campus that I expect that I'm going to be editing pretty frequently. So maybe, for example, the Campus Life page, the Housing and Dining department, there's a lot of different hours for all of the cafeterias in our make-believe Galena University. So I'm going to have to edit this maybe every week, something along those lines. Okay, looks like we still have some transformation errors here, but the point will still stand. Over here in Bookmarks, maybe, for example, I need to edit something specifically in the source code editor of the Housing and Dining page. I just navigate to wherever I need to see, and then I'm going to click my green bookmark button, and it's going to just kind of quickly show me the URL, campuslife/housing, and then it's also going to tell me that I'm in the source editor. Obviously, this is kind of a long URL, so I'm going to just change this bookmark to something a little bit more user-friendly. Dining page source. I'll hit enter, and now I have a bookmark that I can travel to easily. So say, for example, I've made my bookmark and I'm off here in the setup menu just doing something else over here, and suddenly I realize, oh man, I gotta adjust one more thing on that dining page. So I just open up my Bookmarks Gadget, click it, and it's instantly going to take me back to the Housing and Dining page, into the source editor, and I can go in here and make my changes just as you would expect me to. So it's going to be a huge time saver. But say, for example, bookmarking pages, that's pretty easy, no big deal, right? Say, for example, I have a particular custom report that I have to run every single day. For example, it's going to give me a user's report that's going to give me some basic information. I want to know their username, last name, first name, their email address, and the last time that they logged in, and their user level. Why not? I'm going to run that. It's going to give me my report. Perfect. But, if I need to run this every day, I'm going to have to click those checkboxes a whole lot. And so to avoid that, I'm going to run my custom report, and then I'm going to bookmark it. And I'll just say, kind of show the parameters for this report that I want to run. Now I have it. And I'll hop back into, something else. Maybe I'm changing my user settings now. And, oh, okay, it's time for me to run that user's report again. So I'm going to click it, and it's going to take me straight back to the user's report with that information. Or even, what if I do this? What if I even take another user and at this point, I'm going to have more data that's different from what we originally saw in that custom report. And at this point now I've created another user. Well, shoot, now my data is going to change. Let's go back to the user's report, and now we can see there's my test user that I just created right there. So it's not like that information isn't going to be dynamic. If you bookmark a custom report, that data is going to stay fresh and stay up to date, no matter how much it changes from when you made the bookmark to when you're actually traveling to the bookmark. Looks like Robert has a question. Will changing the bookmark name break the link? It will not. So say, for example, the user's report that I've made right here, it's still kind of a long title. So what if I even just trim this down to just saying user's report? Change it right here. Click on it. Oh, well, let me just navigate to a different page first. Click on it, and I'm taken right back to the same URL. So what it's doing is it's actually just taking this entire full URL right here, obviously really huge, and just making a simple bookmark in the product. So changing the name of the bookmark within the gadget will not do anything to break the link to the bookmark itself. So good question, Robert. Thank you for that. So lots of things that you can do here within the Bookmarks gadget. If there are any questions, make sure to put them in the Q&A box. But at this point, I think that we've covered kind of a lot of the basics about it. One more thing that I will mention, obviously, of course, you can filter the bookmarks, but you can also click on this new folder icon, and it's going to allow you to make a new folder, maybe, for example, a folder of common pages. And for this, I can just expand my folder and drag any existing bookmarks I have into that report, or I can always, of course, just create a new bookmark inside the folder itself. So you can also make bookmark folders, which is very useful. And of course, you can delete your bookmarks as well. So maybe this user's report, I really actually don't need to use it that often. I'm going to delete that. It's just going to take care of it. I can also undo it if I want to. Bridget's got a question. Does everyone see the same bookmarks, or are they for an individual account? I believe that they are user-specific. That's something that I want to make sure and confirm, but I am 90% confident that all of the bookmarks are going to be specific to your own user. And Dana is asking, can you create bookmarks for directories or only for pages and reports? You can create bookmarks for literally any URL in OU Campus. So let's go ahead and create one for this particular directory. Maybe I just want to have a bookmark so I can get straight to the Campus Life directory more easily. I'm not in any particular page, just want to get to the directory. So I'm here in the Pages list view, click Bookmark. Campus Life directory. Let's go somewhere else just to test it out. And there we go, straight back to the directory. So there's your answer, Dana. You can make bookmarks for directories, you can make them for pages, you can make them for reports, you can make them for assets, you can make them for anything in the setup menu, anything and everything, all available for you. So now let's move away from the Bookmarks gadget and start talking about our second new gadget, which is the Notes gadget. So if I go up to Setup Gadgets here, you'll notice that I don't have the Notes gadget added to the system just yet. And this is just because I want to have a friendly reminder that for both of these gadgets, Bookmarks and Notes, when OU Campus version 10.4 is released, which is going to be in early February. I don't know if we have a solid release date for it yet. I believe it should be around the first week of February. You will need to go into the marketplace in order to activate them for your account. So let's just go ahead and do that together. Hover over add-ons and click on Marketplace to get into our good old marketplace right here. And if you scroll all the way down, you guys are going to see the list of recently added features to the product. So the Quick Publish gadget came out with, I think, version 10.3.2. It came out somewhat recently. Let's see when it came out. Oh, it's not going to tell me here. But, you know, it was released pretty recently. It was the first additional gadget that we'd released past the release of OU Marketplace. And now you'll also have the Notes gadget and the Bookmarks gadget available to add from here as well. So as we can see, I've installed my Bookmarks gadget, but my Notes gadget hasn't come in yet. So in that case, I'm just going to go ahead and click Add. I'm a level 10 administrator, so this will install the gadget essentially into my account, which will enable me to use it. So I'll just get my notification, click Add, and if I go to Gadget Setup, now I can see that my Notes gadget is right here, ready for me to use. I can just make sure that my access settings are set. Display option is default off. That's fine. I can always turn that on later. So I'm going to go into the gadget settings again, scroll down to the N. There we go. There's the Notes gadget. And I hit save. And as soon as I navigate to a page, the Notes gadget will then appear. So I know that most of you are probably familiar with this, but just to make sure, some gadgets, especially ones on the sidebar, are what are considered context specific. So you'll notice that the Notes gadget right now is not showing up in my sidebar, and that the reason for that is because the Notes gadget is only available to be used when you're viewing an actual piece of content. So the minute that I go to traditions.pcf, for example, I may get another transformation error here. Let's see, hey, success, no transformation error here. And I open the gadget sidebar again, now my Notes gadget will appear, because once again, the Notes gadget is for making notes about particular pages. So it doesn't really make sense to make a note if you're not on the page itself. So if I open up the gadget, you'll see that I have two options, public and private. The public notes are going to be available to all users who are able to view this particular piece of content, and the private notes are going to only be visible to yourself. So in this case, for example, on my traditions page, I want to make sure to leave myself a note. So maybe once this webinar is done, I'm going to go ahead and add a gallery for the homecoming celebration. And as soon as that's done, I'm just going to click my save icon right there. And there's my wonderful note reminding me to do that. I can edit the note later on by hitting that pencil icon. And, you know, I can just go ahead and add some more text there. Click the save button again, and I can also delete that note. So maybe once my gallery has been added, I don't need to make that reminder for myself anymore. But say, for example, I do want to put a public note here. I'll just add another note, something along the lines of lots of traditions. There we go. And you'll see the person who has filed the note, as well as the time and date of the filing, as well as the ability to delete your own notes and edit your own notes. So Jen has a question. They're asking, if I left a public note for a page, even if another user hasn't had the Notes gadget installed, he or she can still see the notes I left. And because you're leaving a note in the gadget itself, another user would not be able to see those notes unless they've gone in and turned on the Notes gadget and have it open up in their sidebar. So these notes are only really visible when you have the Notes gadget open. Obviously, if I close that, or if I turn the Notes gadget off in my gadget sidebar like this, then there's nothing that's necessarily any different about the page. The notes will only appear in the gadget. They don't appear in the page properties of the page or anything along those lines. So this is just another opportunity to encourage your users to make sure that they are using the gadgets. I know that they can be a really big time saver, and sometimes it's hard to kind of get out of that rut of just kind of doing everything manually because everyone's used to doing so. But I've found that if you really kind of encourage your users to use the gadget sidebar, or maybe just kind of have it perpetually open just in case they do feel the need to use it, it makes things go a lot more quickly than you would expect. It's just kind of a matter of encouraging that habit. Even in myself, I have to kind of encourage myself to make sure I have my gadget sidebar open so I can kind of, shorten URLs really quickly if I need to, or use the YouTube gadget or anything along those lines. So if I did want to, for example, log out and log in as a different user right now, what I could do is I would go back to this page and install my Notes gadget. I'd be able to see this note, and I'd be able to post another note from myself, and then both of them would be visible in the public realm. But the private note that I left myself in my first account to add a gallery for the homecoming celebration, my second user would not be able to see that. And before we move on to Tag Manager, one last thing, you can also filter the times for when you want to see the public notes. So say, for example, we've had this note gadget out for 2 years, we're talking deep into the future, and this traditions page has had 20 different public notes posted to it, and none of them have been deleted. Well, maybe there's a good chance that most of those, if not all of those, are out of date to some degree. So you could just filter down to all of the notes that have been filed in the last month, and then all of the others that are probably not really related to what you're going through right now, 2 years in the future. Those are just not going to be visible anymore. And Lori has a question. She's asking, can the Note gadget be added to the dashboard view? Unfortunately, it cannot. It is only available on the sidebar, and that is mostly because the notes are specific to every page inside the site. So if you were viewing the dashboard, you're not viewing a particular page. So at this point right now, the notes are only for particular pieces of content as opposed to kind of global announcements or anything of like that notes. Anything of that kind. And Bridget is asking, is there any way to view all of my public and or private page notes in one place? At this point, I don't believe so. I think that you would have to review the notes specifically for the pieces of content when you are on that piece of content, but that is a good suggestion. I'll follow up with our development team to see if that's something that we do plan on enhancing the Notes gadget with in the future, and I'll make sure to get back to you with the response that I get from them as soon as I hear back. Okay, so if you do have any more notes questions, feel free, add them to the Q&A section in WebEx. But without further ado, I think we've covered most of what we want to know about the Notes gadget. And now we're going to go and move on to the grand poobah of 10.4 enhancements, which is the Tag Manager. So with Tag Manager, I'm going to first kind of show you what to do from kind of an end user's perspective. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and add some tags to some content in some pages on our site. So say, for example, I'm in this academics directory, and oh, you know what? I don't want to go to academics. I want to go to athletics. That's going to be more fun. And let's talk about recreation, for example. I'm going to check my page out and go to properties. And this is the same screen that we would see when we are just editing the standard page parameters for a page, title, description, all of these custom settings, all of that stuff I'm sure most of you all are familiar with. But the one thing that we have added is this little tags right here under title and metadata. And this is where you're going to be able to see all of the tags that have been added into your site already. And the minute you click into the field, it's going to give you this drop down, so you can kind of choose from the tags that have already been configured, and you're also able to make some new tags for yourself. So let's see what kind of athletics have already been added here. So we got lacrosse, pole vault, swimming, all this sort of stuff. I'm trying to think of a sport that hasn't been added as a tag already. Let's talk about field hockey. How about that? Field hockey. So, okay. So in this case, in my directory, what's happened is I can't add a new tag because the tags for this page are restricted to a particular list. So this is something that is really cool from an admin's perspective that we're going to show you in just a couple minutes. But what you can do is you can allow your users to just kind of create new tags willy-nilly for pieces of content, but you can also restrict them to using tags from a particular collection of tags that have already been added, therefore preventing them from just adding gibberish as a tag, for example. So in this situation, let's navigate to a different piece of content and just add a couple new tags of our own, and then we'll come back and show you kind of how to add and manage tags that already exist. So let's go ahead and just go to Campus Life, for example, and do Student Union, Page Properties. Now let's just go ahead and add some more tags. Now we can see that there's a couple more tags that we didn't see before. You know, we've got like astronomy, biology, some course subject, things like this. While I'm filling this out, Caleb Harden asked a great question. He's asking, are tags site-based or account-based? They are account-based, so they will be able to be used across all of the sites that you have in your account. And there's kind of one central repository for all of those to be managed, which I will also be showing in just a couple minutes here. So let's see, Student Union, I'll talk about Student Life, or let's just Student Life right there. That's a new tag. And let's talk about Recreation. And then let's go ahead and actually add some tags that have already been configured. So maybe we'll talk about Finals as a study spot for the Student Union, or the Student Union being a study spot for Finals. There we go. So I've added some new tags into this page, and I'm going to click Save. And that's going to give me new tags that will be able to be used on different pages. So for example, we had 3 different new tags that we just added here. So we, just as a recap, we did Finals, Student Life, and Recreation. I think Recreation was actually also new. So we got all of, Finals was the one that wasn't new. Student Life, Recreation, and Studying. Those I created newly just for this exact situation. So if I wanted to go to Housing Dining, for example, and edit the properties here, now I have my list, and we can see that Recreation, Student Life, Studying, now they're added to my tags list, so I can choose from those. Maybe let's just put Studying right there and talk about Finals, because everyone knows when you're really stressed with Finals, you just go to the caf and eat. At least that's what I did when I was in school. So, you know, it's pretty simple to add tags in this manner. From a standard end user's perspective, all you really need to do is you get to make new tags if you want, or if your administrators have restricted things down to just a subset of tags that you can already choose from, you're just essentially selecting from a list. So that's pretty easy. Now let's talk about it from an admin's perspective. We also have one more quick question before I get into that. They're asking, the tags will convert into meta tag keywords. Not necessarily. So these tags are kind of separate from the tags that you would expect to see with kind of meta keywords or something that's a web standard. These tags can be used to turn into meta keywords. You would have to edit your XSLs to enable that to happen. So it's definitely a thing that you can potentially do with these tags, but it's something that's not hard built into the product, because these tags are meant to kind of be used for other ancillary purposes as opposed to just classifying them as keywords for SEO purposes and things like that. They can be used for other purposes besides that. So we've kind of already seen how to add tags and even potentially create new tags. Let's go see where we manage those tags. So if you're a level 10 admin, if you go to the setup menu, you're going to notice that we have a new option here in the setup menu, and it's called, aptly enough, tags. So let's go ahead and look into the tags that we've got here. As we can see, we've got this massive list of tags, and most of them are just the type of tag. But you'll notice that we have two in here that are called collections. Sorry about that. Hold on a second. So these collections of tags are essentially groups of tags that you can put together that when we talk about adding tags and preventing users from creating new tags, that's where they kind of come into play. So from the tags menu, you can also, as an admin, create new tags just right off the bat right here. So say, for example, I want to talk more about academics. Something like that. That's a new tag that we didn't have before. And you can just hit the new button and make tags right off the bat. That's really easy. I can also create a new collection, which would be essentially a group of tags. So let's call this one, for example, school stuff, for example. And then inside it, I'm going to add all of the kind of more academically related tags that I've added so far. So academics and finals, and I think I've got a couple others, studying. I'm going to go ahead and create that collection of tags. And if we scroll down here, we can see that we've got our school stuff collection, and that collection will come into play in just a couple minutes here. So we have this. We also see that when you hover over the tag manager, or the tag screen, you have a couple of different options. You can edit tags, so that would just be changing the tag name, which I think reflects that change across any pages that have been tagged with that particular thing. So for example, if I wanted to change physics to something like engineering instead, not really sure why you'd do that, but in this case, then all of the pages that were previously tagged with physics would then have that change reflected back to engineering. We also have the ability to disable tags, and the reason why disabling tags is a potential benefit to administrators is, say for example, you do give your end users the ability to add brand new tags and tag pages with things that had never been added into the system before. Obviously, you want to prevent people from adding tags that don't necessarily belong. So either just gibberish, or maybe curse words, or anything along those lines that you don't want content to be categorized as. You could create those tags inside the tag manager and then disable them, which essentially means that users would not be able to tag any content that matches that string of text. So the difference between disabling a tag and deleting a tag is that, for example, if I had a curse word that someone had added into one of my pages, and I don't want that to be an option for people to choose from. If I simply deleted it, it would delete it from the list of tags that have been already created, but potentially someone else could just go in and make that same curse word again. So the other option is instead to disable the tag, which means that it's still listed as kind of a database entry, for example, but no one can actually use that tag anymore, and it's not going to show up in the list that people can choose from when they are making tags. Joshua's got a question, now that we're at a little quick question. He's asking, what are the repercussions if you have a tag assigned to a page, but then at some point in the future the tag is deleted? I believe what happens in that case is any pages that have been tagged with that particular tag, that tag would then just disappear. But let's just go ahead, and we know that we, for example, added the studying tag to a couple of pages. If I click the delete button right here, it's going to give me that confirmation. It's going to say, do you want to delete the tag studying? The tag will be removed from all existing content. So all of the pages that did have the studying tag applied to it will then be removed as soon as the tag is removed from this central repository. If you do want to prevent that from happening, the option would be then to disable the tag. So maybe you don't want that tag to be used anymore, but you still want it to exist on the pages that it was on already, that it was already placed on. That's the situation where you would disable the tag, so no one could use it anymore, but it would still be preserved on the places that it was already placed. Okay, so we have quite a few more questions here coming in with tags. I knew that Tag Manager would bring up a lot of questions. I like this. This is exciting. So we have just a couple of questions just asking, once again, the purpose of tags. Just to reiterate, there's a lot of things that you can do with tags. You can use the tags to be meta keywords. You would modify your XSLs in order to kind of pull those tags in to the meta keyword section of the source code. Additionally, you can use these tags to find content in OU Campus more easily. So if you tag a whole bunch of content, which I'm going to show later on, if you tag a whole bunch of content with various different sort of thematic elements and things like that, you're able to find content that is tagged with those things much more easily than trying to remember what its file name is, for example. And then the other really big benefit is being able to add more dynamic content onto your site by tagging pages and then bringing in a list that dynamically shows other pages that are tagged with similar tags, or things like that case. Norma is also asking, just to be clear, tags will replace keywords, and if that's correct, will our existing keywords be automatically turned into tags? Tags will not necessarily replace keywords. It's something that there's the potential that you could do that, for example, but it will not replace the meta keywords that you've already added for your pages and things like that. So it's not necessarily correct, and in response to the will your existing keywords be automatically turned into tags, once again, that's not the case. The existing keywords at this point are still residing in their own separate world, kind of. They're a separate entity, so they will be preserved even if you do at one point in the future decide to have your tags replace your keywords, and that would be an active decision that you would make to happen. You would probably have to manually recreate all those keywords and things like that if you did decide to make that happen. Joshua had another question, and he's asking, can you publish all pages with a certain tag? At this point, I don't believe that's something that we necessarily have built into the product. It's not like there's a button that you press that says publish all files with this tag on it, but maybe there's a potential for that to happen with using our API and having a custom-built gadget that would potentially do that, but I think that would be something you'd have to put your heads together and think of. Maybe for the next gadget challenge, that would be something that would be worth exploring there. But good question, Josh. Okay, so let's talk about the final thing in this tag manager area. I've got a couple tags here that all are kind of related to the same thing. I've got a tag called OU10, I've got a tag called OUC10, I've got one called V10, and they're all, of course, referencing OU Campus version 10. But I don't necessarily want people to have to choose from all three of these tags when really we only really want one. So what I can do is I can do what's called a tag merge. So I'm going to go ahead and select all three of these tags inside my list here. And I have this option that says to merge. And what this is going to do is it's going to say, okay, take all of the content that have any of these three tags applied to them, and we're going to replace all of those tags with one tag, and I can choose which of the three I want all of that content to be applied to. So maybe, for example, the one I really want to keep is V10. So I'm going to say merge tags into V10, and it's going to take any pages that have OU10 or OUC10, and it's going to change them to V10, and it's also going to disable OU10 and OUC10, and you can notice that it's disabled by it being gray, and also the content is italicized. So that means my users aren't going to be able to tag things with OU10 or OUC10 anymore. They are only going to be able to use V10 if they want to reference OU Campus version 10. So this is another thing that's really good from an admin's perspective. If you do have people kind of making tags willy-nilly and there's just a lot of synonyms piling up here, you can then choose to merge these all together in order to make things be a little bit more cohesive and make a little bit more sense. And we got some more questions. Sarah's got a question. Will there be a detailed how-to provided to create XSL to pull tags dynamically onto a page? At this point, I don't necessarily know if we have plans to do that, mostly because everyone's implementation from an XSL perspective is so wildly potentially different that there may need to be a lot of specificity for how you would exactly do that for everybody's templates. I will say that the release of 10.4 exposes a couple XSL APIs that allow it to happen, so there's specific XSL commands, but unfortunately I'm not enough of a web developer to know what those are offhand. If you're curious about that more, Sarah, I will follow up with our dev team who knows some more of those details there. And I'll be able to try to get you as much information as I can. But I'm sure that more information is going to be forthcoming about the development side of things after we've released version 10.4. At this point, since we're still in the preview stage, I think some of those things are still being worked out. So that's as much as I can give you right now. I'm sure that there will be documentation at some point, but I know that there will have to be a lot of specific attention paid on a case-by-case basis, depending on what your XSLs already look like, and kind of how you want that tags being pulled dynamically, how you want that to look like on your specific templates, because it's going to look different for everybody depending on how your templates already look. So we are doing a marathon training Tuesday today. I'm going to try to wrap up quickly so we can get done at noon. So let's see if I can finish all of the main points of Tag Manager in 7 more minutes here. But at this point, just to recap from the setup screen, you can add new tags, you can add new collections, you can edit existing tags, you can disable existing tags, and you can also delete existing tags. And then, of course, you can merge tags together if you find that people are kind of giving you synonyms that really shouldn't exist, and they should all be just merged under one specific tag there. So let's go ahead and show you how you can restrict your users from just creating tags willy-nilly, because I'm sure that many of you, as administrators, want to kind of enforce what kind of tags people can choose from rather than just giving them carte blanche to do whatever they want. So I'm back here in the Pages list view, and say, for example, on this Student Union page, I want to make sure that they can only choose from a specified list of tags right here. So I'm going to hover over Edit, and then if I go to Access, right, yeah. Oh, you know what? Sorry about that. The change is actually only available on Directories as opposed to single pages. My apologies there. So if I hover over Edit for a directory, you have a new option called Tag Access. And you're going to get a screen that looks pretty similar to the Access Settings dialog box that most of you probably are quite familiar with. Of course, there's fewer options, but you have the Update Options panel right here, and this is the same thing as the recursive modification. You can apply the settings to the folder only, which means that any new files created inside of it will be bound by these rules, but then you can also decide to apply the selected settings to this folder and all of the enclosed files and folders that already exist inside your directory. So in this case, since I don't really want to make a whole bunch of new files inside of Campus Life, I'm going to do this. And what I'm going to do is I can also choose the application method when I have this option selected. So say, for example, I'm coming in with a whole bunch of tags that have already been applied to all of the pages inside my directory. I have two options. What I can do is I can add to existing tags, so anything that I change in this dialog box now will simply just be appended to the tags that have already been added. Or my alternative is to go scorched earth and overwrite the existing tags that have already been made for this page, or any of the pages inside of it, excuse me, and just replace it with the specific tags that I'm adding right here. So two options. At this point, I'm going to overwrite the existing tags. I don't really think I had many to choose from in the first place, but just so we're starting from kind of a clean slate, we're going to do this. Then I have two options. I have fixed tags, and then I have filtered tags. The fixed tags are going to be tags that are automatically applied to every single page inside of this directory. So say, for example, inside of Campus Life, maybe I want to always apply the student life tag to every page that exists inside this directory. And this is a tag that could potentially be deleted in the future if you wanted it to, but the minute that the page is created, the fixed tag will automatically be added to it. No extra user intervention necessary. And then the other option is filtered tags. And filtered tags is going to work really similarly to kind of the extensions allowed and disallowed option in the normal access settings dialog box. So instead of allowing and disallowing people from uploading files with certain extensions, you're allowing and disallowing your users to add a set of tags from the system, So in this case, maybe for example inside Campus Life, I want them to only choose from school stuff, which means that the 3 tags that belong to this collection are the only tags that my users can choose from when they're adding tags to content onto this page. And so that's how that's done through the allow only these tags section right here. Or I could also disallow these tags, which means that all of the tags inside of whatever collection I choose from here, such as athletics, cannot be chosen from when I'm in the Campus Life directory. So this is the main benefit of having tag collections. Instead of having to manually add every single tag that's allowed or disallowed, I can just make a collection containing all of these tags that I want and then have it be what I use in my filtered tag section right here. I can do the same thing with fixed tags up in here. You'll notice that I have school stuff and athletics as tag options here. Here's the thing. This is just kind of a quick note that I want to make sure is clear on. Athletics, even though it's the name of a collection, it is also a tag name. So just in the same way that school stuff is. But when I'm adding them here in fixed tags, you notice that there's no number right next to athletics and no number next to school stuff because we're not actually applying the full collection of tags from the fixed tag section. We're only adding the tag, which is the collection name, so athletics and school stuff. So that's just a quick difference there. Athletics right here means that you can only choose from the athletics tags, but adding athletics right here just means that the tag athletics is going to be added to all of the pages. So I know that that's a little bit hard to wrap your head around, but I know that once 10.4 comes out and you're able to kind of look around at how everything is working and just experiment with it a little bit yourself, it'll start to make sense, and it's pretty intuitive when you look at it. So now I'm just going to apply these settings and we can just see what they look like. I'm actually going to do school stuff because athletics has just a whole lot of tags that you can choose from there. Okay, so student life is going to be applied to every page inside my directory, and then people are only going to be able to choose from school stuff and the tags inside of it when they're adding additional tags past student life. So I'll hit save, and let's go into Campus Life, go back to Student Union, and if I go to Properties, oh, it looks like it didn't actually end up getting applied. That is all right. You'll notice now that my student life tag, it doesn't have an X on it, and that's simply because that tag is fixed from the access settings perspective, and now I only have school stuff to choose from. So my school stuff tag, studying finals, and academics as well. So I can add these and these right there. I'll hit save, and then I'm good to go. So that's the best way for your admins to enforce people choosing from tags that already exist, as opposed to just being able to adding tags whatever the heck they want. So we got a question from Matt, and he's asking, when 10.4 comes out, do you have to activate the tags module for the account and for individual sites? Matt, you are in luck. You will not need to do that. As soon as 10.4 gets pushed out to SaaS customers, if you're a SaaS customer, or you choose to upgrade if you are an ESL customer, the tag manager will be on and ready to start using. So of course you're not going to have any tags yet, and they're not going to be applied to any pages, but all you need to do is just start tagging away and you'll be good to go. All right, so with that, we've pretty much covered most of the features that are available to you with the advent of Tag Manager. I will just back out into the Pages list view to kind of just show you the ability to kind of search by tags, which we haven't talked too much about, but it also is pretty easy to use. So hopefully they won't be needed to discuss too much. But say for example, we've got our quick search bar, which is functions very similarly to just our filtering. You're going to filter by file name, but then this tag button right here, it's going to give you a list of all the tags that are available. So once you've started tagging all of your content, now you can just search by tag instead of having to remember what the file name is. If I went into the Student Union page, for example, and I wanted to add an image onto a page, let me just go ahead and do this really quickly. I'm going to browse for my image, standard deal. I now have another field in my image file chooser. I can normally filter by name just like normal. So if I search for campus, it's going to show up everything that's got the word campus in it. But then what if I wanted to look for all of the images that have green in them? So, I've got this green campus and I've got, a bunch of really nice buildings, but this campus cafe, look at this beautiful green. I tagged this with the tag of green, and I think it's going to show up. I hope so. Oh, I don't exactly know what just happened there. It just dropped me off. If I search for the tag of green, oh, you know what? See, this is why it's a preview, folks. There's still some little inconsistencies in here, but we will have these kinks ironed out before 10.4 is released. You can be rest assured of that. But if I did happen to tag all of my files with particular tags, then they would show up in the list view instead of just having to search by file name. And so that works when you're inserting images, it works when you're inserting links, it works when you're inserting videos, as well as working in the Pages list view. And the final place where it works is also in the Assets list view. So you'll notice that we have a slight difference in the way that the Asset Manager, you can search for things now. You can now search by asset type this way, as well as filter by text. Standard deal right there. And then the final option is you can search by tag as well. Again, I don't know if I've tagged any of these. Okay, it looks like I have, which is great. So all of these, we can tell, are all tagged with the blog tag. These three have the word blog in it, so that's not too hard to understand. But this one doesn't have the word blog in it, but it's still related to blogs, and it was tagged. So if I click on this, I can see what tags I'm searching for, and I can remove it, and then I go back to my normal list view. So that essentially wraps up all that I wanted to show you today about Tag Manager. I'm really excited for all the questions that I got today. This is really awesome. I'm just really happy that you guys are as excited about Tag Manager as we are at Omni Update. It looks like Dana's going to end us off with one more question, and she's asking, tags that were already used in assets won't be brought over into Tag Manager. That is actually incorrect. All of the tags that you've been tagging your assets with, I believe those are going to be carried over into Tag Manager, and so they will stay where they are. They will all be applied to the same assets that you've already been tagging them with. The only thing that changes is that now that those tags are available to be applied to pages and binary files and other things along those lines too. And they will show up inside setup tags right when 10.4 comes out. That is, I believe, what will happen there. So if there are any just like really last minute questions, don't hesitate to just pop them in the Q&A section right now. But I'll just take like 1 or 2 minutes to see if there's any others. And without further ado, then I think we'll probably wrap it up for the day.
This is actually Brianna. I do have something to add in regards to the questions earlier for forms and Captcha. Currently, that functionality is not tied to anything at all. The way that LDP forms work in general is that we provide an interface to build a form with options for each element, and then OU Campus just provides XML that gets that represents the form, and the XSL determines what actually gets output to the production website. So in other words, we aren't providing any Captcha service natively, and the XSL or implementation would determine which one gets used. So in other words, you can use anything for that service.
All right, there we go. You heard it here first, folks. So Captcha, once it comes out, will pretty much be up to your institution to determine which one, which type of Captcha you want to use, reCAPTCHA or something homegrown or anything along those lines. And it looks like we have one more question to wrap us up from Matt, and he's asking, is there tag permissions at the user level, like if a person or level is allowed to create tags? At this point, with the release of 10.4, there won't be any tag permissions yet, but we do have it on the roadmap to kind of add that later on, post-conference. We're going to be doing a really massive enhancement to the way that access settings and permissions work in the system. And I believe that allowing certain user levels to create tags, but disallowing lower level users, for example, to create those tags, that's something that we do have planned. So it won't come out with 10.4, but I believe it will come out later. Thank you for that question. Good one. So without further ado, just so we can kind of get you guys off of your lunch break webinar viewing sessions here, just so you know, next Training Tuesday, we will not have one in February due to the conference. So if you're coming to OUTC 16, we will be excited to see you in person. And if you're viewing any workshops, you'll get your monthly dose of training anyways from us. This time it'll just be in person, and it'll be in downtown Los Angeles. So we hope to see you then. If you won't be at the conference, we will miss you, but we will resume back in March, and I'm sure we'll have lots of exciting new things to do Training Tuesdays on from there on out. So once again, thank you guys for your attention and all of your great questions today during our preview of 10.4 features. And make sure to keep your eyes peeled on the support site for the recording of this webinar once we get it all captioned out and ready to go. And then also keep your eyes peeled for the release of 10.4 coming up in probably just a week or two. Thank you guys. I really appreciate all the questions that you guys had today, and I will make sure to follow up with people who were interested in getting follow-ups there.
Thank you everyone for attending.